It's feeding time, and this is often contemplation time for me in the morning. I also have a morning meditation practice, which is amazing for that as well, but there's just something about being with the horses that really helps me. This morning, I just felt to share a little bit about conflict avoidance for the empath. I think conflict avoidance is something many of us deal with, and we deal with it differently depending on the situation and depending on our nature, sort of our approach to things. And certainly for a lot of us who are empaths out there, where we feel all the feels that belong to other people sometimes and can kind of get lost in those others, also real codependency tendencies. Conflict avoidance is real because the conflict, we feel both sides of the conflict. We may feel deeply and emotionally and intensely about our side of the situation, and then we also feel it for the other side of the coin, the other person involved, and it can cause a lot of issues for us in dealing with conflict. And it's something I've noticed a lot in myself, and something that the horses have really been helping me to face, which is avoidance of conflict is avoidance of truth at times. It's not like we want to run around fighting everybody self-righteously because we're so right, but there's this thing that happens where you want to avoid the conflict of hurting somebody else's feelings because of a situation that really needs to be addressed, or speaking truth that is scary for the repercussions of it. And what we're doing when we avoid conflict in those situations is we're disempowering ourselves and the other, and we're living in untruth. So there have been many times where I will feign ignorance of an issue because I don't want to deal with the fact that I knew and made a choice and it's affected somebody negatively. Either I don't want to own it, or I don't want them to know I own it because it would hurt their feelings that I made that choice. And it's no way to live. It's living out of integrity with yourself, with myself. You don't want to live that way. And it disempowers the other. So if I made a conscious choice, even if it was the wrong one and I feel that now, if I can't own that, then I'm not learning my lesson. And if I feel it was the right choice and I can't communicate that, then I'm not sharing my choice to allow the other to make their own choice. I'm making that choice for them by keeping them in ignorance about something in order to avoid conflict with myself. And a few years ago, I remember reading a Brené Brown book, Dare to Lead, and she talks about this really horribly uncomfortable thing that happens when we have to speak truth and it's not what somebody wants to hear. And she makes this wonderful point that I've carried with me ever since and continuously tried to practice, which is that uncomfortable, horrible feeling of dealing with somebody else having a reaction, a conflict reaction to what I have to say, is that it lasts about 5 seconds. That discomfort, maybe 30 seconds of discomfort. And then what comes out of it is a real life conversation about what to do now and how we might address it, or whatever unfolds. But that horrible feeling of having to own your choice and deal with the repercussion of it doesn't last that long. It's a very uncomfortable, maybe 30 seconds of your life, and then that other person gets to make their own choice about what they're going to do with your decision, or about with your actions. And that is such a guiding principle in living truth. And, some of us are challenged more by walking in this world unaware of how it's impacting other people. And in those cases, the conflict avoidance is probably still there for your own benefit. Like, I don't want to deal with that because it might stop me in my direction. And that's another thing to be looking at. Or I do want to deal with that because I'm self-righteous and I think I'm right and that person is wrong. That's also something to really look at. But if you're not being true in standing in your choices and dealing with what comes, then you're also not learning the lessons. If you're avoiding conflict because you don't want to deal with somebody else's response to it and you feel justified, you're right, you're also avoiding the truth because you might be wrong and that other person's reaction might be very justified. So as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, that conflict avoidance is a lot about protecting feelings and feeling right, but not wanting to hurt anybody or just not wanting to deal with it. And, either side of the coin, if we can't own our choices in the open, we're not learning. And anyone who's affected by those choices is not given the honor of having their own response, taking responsibility for that. So that's my conflict avoidance speech this morning, but I just really value how the horses are teaching me, and I didn't really address that here, but what's really happening is these guys are super impersonal about their conflicts. When somebody's in their way and not listening, they just move each other. They put as much pressure on that horse as is required to get the action that they need, and then they completely let it go. They don't hold grudges. It's not personal. It's just, I'm doing my life, and you get to do yours, and we're working it out. I mean, it's amazing. It just moves through them. They are living in their truth all the time because they don't deal with all these complexities that we do. Of who am I and all this. They're just themselves fully. And so they move each other and they drink water in an order and they have a hierarchy and it keeps them safe. But it's not personal. And they take responsibility for their actions. It's liberating to walk through this world taking responsibility for yourself and letting everybody else take responsibility for themselves. I hope you have an amazing day. Lots of love.